Uh, I'm sure that together, if you added up the years, you get well over 100 years of experience here. And we're going to take this opportunity to ask them some questions and get their views. Not so much questions, but just simply what they feel about cocking. I'll start with James McWhite, who's in the middle of our picture right now, and ask him, if you were to stay in the sport for the next 20 years, Mac, how would you breed, or what kind of fowl would you be looking for to keep you in the sport for the next 20 years?
Well, probably the best way to answer that is right now I'm trying to develop a family of Madigan Clarets. And I have two families to work with, but basically they're the same family. And I like the Madigan Clarets because I think that they're the foundation of a lot of our brood yard families that we have now. And I don't think anyone ever came through that was a greater cocker than John Madigan. And a lot of people do call E.W. Law, Curtis Blackwell, Mr. Kelso, all of them based their bloodlines off of Mr. Madigan's. So that tells me that they were very sound fowl, and it would carry on into the future, and that's basically what I'm trying to do with them.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mac. Joe, what about you? What do you think the future holds, and how should we start preparing to deal with it in terms of fowl in our sport?
Well, to begin with, the Humane Society is going to give us a lot of problems over the years, and as far as I'm concerned, I am also trying to develop fowl, but I'm considering developing some fowl for the Postiza, for Puerto Rico, and places like that. And at this point, I have some of the brood stock that I like, and I'm going to continue with that. But basically, I'm a short-heel man, and that's the kind of fowl I like. When I select for my brood yard, I want hard-hitting game fowl, and preferably that can cut. I want a very healthy family, a good, strong family that will do all the things I want them to do. Medium station, satisfactory to me, and I want the hens to be very alert and the cock to be very alert. And if you're going to continue in the sport, if you want to continue with the sport, you better get better, because today everybody is getting better.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Mr. Johnny Jumper, your opinion. What are you going to be doing to make sure you can stay in the sport another 15, 20 years?
Well, I'm going to try to go forward, not backward, and that ain't easy. But I'm basically satisfied with the bloodlines I have, but you never want to be totally satisfied, because if you do, you're not going to be improving.
Okay.
So we always try to improve. Of course, in my breeding program, I have to think about myself, but I have to think about, I make a living raising roosters. And that's roosters for the Philippines and Mexico is my biggest market. So the Kelso type chickens has always been the best chickens for me, for that, because we have high station roosters that can fight and cut. And as far as selecting brood roosters, the first thing I want to do is look inside the rooster, see what kind of heart he has. Then next I want the cutting ability. Then of course we all like beauty, but that's what my plans are. Good selection and trying to improve what we have. That is as I'm about to put it.
Johnny, thank you so much. Matt, to get back to you now, what's more important, breeding or selection?
Well, I think one kind of falls in line with the other one. Without selection, you can't really carry on good breeding practices. And I think that's maybe, in my opinion, why the South kind of maybe went ahead of the North in their breeding. It's not so much because we knew more, but it's because we were able to do more. We had a lot more land that we could use to breed numbers. And of course, from numbers, you get a better selection to carry your fowl on with. To continue with the same idea with Joe, you've been to so many countries, you've seen so many chickens.
Are they all the same family of chickens, or you think by now they've separated out into different sorts of animals altogether?
As far as I'm concerned, I feel the same as I felt 20 or 30 years ago. I simply believe that there are horses for courses and cocks for heels. And anyone that's going to fight in one particular type field, if he is a selective breeder and he breeds for that one type, he will be more successful than if he tries to breed a universal type cock. Explain to you, a long-heeled cock has to have certain qualities. They are definitely different than a cock that would be fought in short heels, and quite a bit difference between that cock and a Spanish-type fowl, which is going to fight in postizas. The styles cannot be mixed. It's impossible as far as I'm concerned. We do have the influence of Oriental fowl now, which is affecting both families. In some cases, it improves them. In some cases, it does not. But I still believe that if a man is going to fight in long heels, he should breed that type fowl and perfect that type fowl. If he's going to breed postiza fowl, he should breed that type fowl and perfect that type fowl. He's never going to be able to intermix those or use them in opposite heels.
I see. Johnny, you mentioned the Philippines and you mentioned Mexico. You're talking short knife and long knife. Are they the same kinds of chickens, or do you breed separately for those two weapons?
Some of them can fight in either one, but it's hard to keep that strand going because they are at the borderline where they can fight in each one of those. So I'll agree with Joe. You more or less need to breed them for one specific weapon that they're going to be fighting against, because there is so much difference. And definitely we send different roosters to the Philippines than we would send to Mexico, because it's a different style fight.
Mm-hmm. What are the differences between the Mexican fowl and the Filipino fowl in terms of their qualities? What are the major differences?
Well, we try to have the same quality for both places, as far as the quality is concerned, but it does take more power, maybe more endurance to fight in the Mexican weapon it does the Filipino weapon, because as a whole the fights last longer and it's a longer fight, so you just have to have something that can go the distance more.
Okay, thank you. And Matt, now I have to ask you another question. What's the role of the Aseel in all this? What does the Aseel do for anybody who breeds?
Aseel basically is going to put good health in the fowl. If you raise, we'll say, an Aseel cross, if he hatches out, unless something like a wild animal or a hawk or an owl, unless something catches him, he's pretty well going to make it because of the health. They just don't come down with very much disease. They're almost disease resistant. And the qualities they're going to put in is good cutting, and they're going to put some ring generalship into the make them smart. And I think probably right now the Aseel families are probably having more effect on our breeding than maybe they have in the last 50 years.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this is so throughout the United States?
Pardon me?
Throughout the United States, both in the north, south, east, and west?
I think more so in the southern and the western states, more so than the north, because the style of fighting that we're doing. And, they're proven that they can fight the Aseel crosses in the long knife, which I fought with Bob Howard, and I bred the cocks that we fought. But we won 31 straight fights for those in major competition in the long knife.
Correct.
And they did very well in the Philippines also. And also, last year, I asked Johnny to train a show of roosters for me that were half of my gray blood, and they were half Aseel. And I only gave Johnny 10 cocks to start with for a 9-cock derby. And we wound up winning sunset with those cocks in the short knife. So those can pretty well fight either way.
That's great. Joe, now let's talk about qualities. For me, quality means strength, power, speed, cutting. Is there any order you'd put those, or are there any qualities that are so much more important than the others that they deserve to be put apart?
I think the primary quality, as far as I'm concerned, is gameness, because you'll win a lot more fights with a gamecock, whether he's really in shape or not, than you will with a dunghill. You can get a dunghill in good shape and he'll win. But if he's not in 100% good shape, you're not going to do any good. The qualities, that's number one quality. The second, of course, is power. I love power. And I guess the third has to be cutting ability. And that could be number one also, because if you can't cut, you can't win.
Mm-hmm.
The other quality, of course, endurance and disposition. I spoke with Johnny Jumper about this, and the disposition of a family of chickens is very important, because it's very difficult to try to condition mean roosters, highly nervous roosters. Whereas if you have one that has a good disposition, it's such a pleasure to work with.
Right. Okay.
And on the Aseel side, as far as I'm concerned, the time is getting to a point where we're having less and less space, at least in the north. They can stand confinement better